I want to ask you about some developments in the UK. You'd be aware the NHS is going to be scrapping so much of the language lunacy we have seen in recent years. And this really seems to be a rather dramatic step where they're not just discouraging the use of words like chest feeding and things like people who have ovaries as opposed to saying women. They're going to say they're banned. You're going to call it breastfeeding, you're going to call women women, and you're not going to allow trans women or biological men who identify as women to be in women-only spaces in hospitals. Tell me about this development.
Well, I think, Rita, these are some really welcome developments, and I have known for some time that the United Kingdom was quite far ahead of Australia in this regard, in looking very critically at how this radical gender ideology has taken over so many elements of public life, but particularly so many elements of the health system. And I'd certainly like to see us looking a little more closely at these issues here in Australia, because I don't think there's any question that the vast majority of the community in the UK and here as well think it's wildly inappropriate to refer to women as people who have uteruses or breastfeeding mothers as chest-feeding mothers. I mean, not only is it inappropriate, it's medically inaccurate in so many instances. It doesn't make medical sense to be using these sorts of words, I think is the expression I'm looking for. And so I really think that here in Australia we need to be having an independent review, not just into the issues and the concerns that the Cass review have revealed, like you say, but also how did we find ourselves in a position where this radical gender ideology has taken over our bureaucracy, has taken over our institutions in a way that a practice of care has been provided to young children in this country, where we know overseas that practice has been completely debunked and is not having good medical outcomes for children.
Mm-hmm.
Claire, just briefly, we've been talking earlier on the show about the protests, the pro-Palestinian protests, the overt anti-Semitism that's been popping up in our universities. It's way worse overseas in the States and Britain, but it is happening here. And we were debating, what is the role of government in stepping in, showing some leadership? Your colleague, Sarah Henderson, has been very strident, saying that Jason Clare has gone missing in action. What do you think? We all love free speech, as we've been discussing. So where should government be involved in either putting, defunding universities that won't prevent the sort of anti-Semitic hate speech we've been seeing? What's your thoughts?
Oh, look, I think that the Australian government absolutely has to provide some more leadership in this space. I've been particularly looking at what is happening at Columbia University over the last week, and I'm very grateful that we haven't seen scenes precisely like that here in Australia. But I also think that there's an argument that it could potentially only be a matter of time before we do. If government doesn't make a very clear stance and say to universities that, obviously we want free speech on our university campuses. That's something I have felt I still do feel very strongly about, but I've been very outspoken on in the past. But we need to make sure that where these protests are happening, that they are lawful, that they're not violent, and that they're not making these sort of really anti-Semitic, horrific comments towards the Jewish community here in Australia. So I would like to see some leadership from the government and from the university sector more broadly, so that we don't see these scenes that have been playing out overseas happening in Australia as well.
Senator Claire Chandler, great as always to chat to you. Thanks for coming on Outsiders this morning.